Hello and welcome to The Pickle, brought to you by AC4SA, academic coaching for student athletes, and co-hosted by Ethan O'Day and Jack Sundberg. Here on The Pickle, we discuss with our guests, ranging from coaches to professional athletes, the pickle of all things, academics, sports, recruiting, high school to the pros, you name it, we talk about it. Our goal for the podcast is to give people insight into the sports world and student athletes' perspectives by sharing current and former athletes, educators, and coaches' real-life experiences. Telling story is one of the most powerful means for leaders to influence, teach, and inspire. These stories resonate in our culture, history, and lesson learned. The Pickle brings you these stories of adversity, triumph, failure, and determination to get inspired, to take them to your school, home, life, and court. Listen, learn, share, and enjoy. Today's guest is Nate Rohrer. Nate is originally from Underhill, Vermont, but moved to California in the San Jose area right before high school and attended Leland High School, where he was the team MVP. From there, he attended West Valley Community College in Saratoga Valley, California. After being an all-conference player there, he was offered a spot on the University of Vermont men's basketball team, where he would go back to his roots in the Burlington, Vermont area to win an America East championship and have an NCAA tournament berth. Nate currently works as a software designer with his computer science degree from the University of Vermont and resides in Wisconsin. Welcome to The Pickle.
All right, The Pickle Pod. We're back and we're better. As always, super excited for our guest today. Former teammate of mine, former D1 basketball player, current video game designer at Raven. Probably designed a video game that some of our listeners have played. Who knows? Underhill, Vermont's very own Nate Rohrer. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Nate, excited to have you on. Cool story. Vermont, Cali, the whole thing. I know you're a huge listener of ours, probably our top listener, so excited to have you on. And as you know, Ethan leads us off with a little rapid fire question, just 5 quick questions. Get the guests to know you a little bit better. Ethan, take them away.
All right, here's the rundown. Dinner with one athlete.
I'm going to have to go Peyton Manning. He was my favorite athlete growing up, super smart guy, super good guy on and off the field, a real role model for me, even though he's not a basketball player, but some guy I watched a good amount of my childhood and looked up to.
Yes, and great personality and funny too. I feel like
yes.
he
is a funny guy.
Yeah.
Great commercial guy.
Sure.
Yeah, great commercial guy. Number one thing on the bucket list.
This is tough. I think I'm going to have to say renting an RV and doing a big road trip, with my wife and my dog. I've always loved the car road trips, but going all out with an RV and just going around the country for a few weeks. I think that would be great.
Talk to Jack about that. He just in his Tacoma.
Get the taco, baby. Get the taco.
Sounds awesome.
Favorite movie of all time?
I'm gonna go with The Prestige from 2006. It's tough to say it's my favorite movie, but it's the movie that paved the way for the kind of movies I like. So I got to give it credit.
Yep. Yeah,
wow.
You put me for that one, and it really is just that mind movie that just messes you up at the end. I completely agree. It did pave the way.
To pencil that one in.
Yeah. How do you start your day every morning?
Well, I wake up about 7:15. Get dressed, get a nice tall glass of water, and then sit right at this desk for 8 hours of working from home, like I've been doing for the past year.
That work from home life. We're gonna get you in the office eventually.
I hope so. Yeah.
All right. Final question here. Your favorite quote.
I'm a really big quote guy, so this is tough. I think in the context of this, podcast, I'm gonna have to go with luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. I think a lot of my athletic and academic career can be attributed to that quote.
Wow. I like that.
All right, that's the rundown. You've completed it. Well done.
Thank you, sir.
You did it. You finished. Awesome. Yeah, that was some great stuff. So we pretty much just dive right in here. I think, you obviously have a different experience than most. Some guys that come in and come in freshman year and they go take summer classes, and then, you know, they get right on campus, get to know everybody. You sort of had a different story. You went the JUCO route, which happens all the time, but no one really talks about it for some reason. You know, everyone likes to talk about the guy who's signing the NLI, you know, come February, and sort of the JUCO thing gets sort of pushed behind because maybe it's not as glamorous, but it's definitely the route for some folks. So talk about your journey, just going from, you know, junior college to UVM, the whole process, and how that even really started.
Yeah, I think it was a product of just me not being recruited at all in high school. You know, I think junior year is the big year of recruitment for guys, and I was just, you know, an average player on an average public school team in California, and it really wasn't until the AAU basketball season after my junior year that I had a coach come up and talk to me after I had a good game, and, you know, gave me his business card. And that was the first time I really thought, I was like, wow, maybe I actually could, you know, play somewhere. And then I had a much better senior season. Started getting some like D3 NAIA looks, as well as like the, you know, the whole local junior colleges, you know, that were starting to recruit me. And then by the time of the end of the senior year, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know if I wanted to play basketball. I didn't know what I wanted to study. And so JUCO sort of provided that stepping stone. You know, for those who don't know, JUCO is like a 2-year college. You know, I get 2 years, you know, eligibility, and then the goal by the end of that is to be both academically ready to transfer and athletically ready to transfer. You know, you get your AA degree and, you know, move up. And so, not knowing what I wanted to do, I decided to go to a local JUCO and live at home for 2 years, and hopefully with the goal in mind of like playing at the next level. And then my freshman year, I broke my foot, and so I had to redshirt. And, you know, it was really tough there because I'd sort of given up the opportunity to go to a 4-year right out of high school, whether it was, you know, play D3 basketball or go to a good school that I'd gotten into. And so I was sort of like staring at myself in the mirror, like, was this the right choice at all? Like, I'm down to 1 year to like prove myself. You know, if another injury or setback happens, you know, this could be all for nothing, right? Mm-hmm. And then so my second year played pretty well, started getting, you know, there's a little bit more exposure, I think, at my JUCO. I played in 2 showcases, which also helped. Had a lot of D2 interest. And, you know, again, sort of by the end of it, I was unsure just because I wanted it to be, you know, the right fit athletically, the right fit academically. I had a goal to play Division I basketball, you know, whether or not I actually could at the time, you know, that was sort of a goal I had set for myself. And so by the end of it, I had gotten into UC Irvine, which was my number one, you know, choice if it was strictly just talking academically. Mm-hmm. And so I went down there to visit the campus, and my mom and I just walked into the coach's office, and I'm like, are any coaches around? And he points me to one of the assistant coaches that's there. And I had a packet with me. I had my transcripts. I had, you know, my stat sheet printed out. I had like information where to find highlight videos and game film. I just talked to the assistant coach. Yeah. And I'm like, he sees me, I'm like a tall guy, and, you know, I'm like, I'm already accepted to the school. You know, there's a good chance I'm coming. I would really love to play basketball for you guys. You know, obviously that's a pretty major program. And, you know, he was very nice to sit down and talk with some random kid who walked into his office. And then a few weeks later, he called me and pretty much told me, he's like, yeah, we'll have a walk-on spot on the team for you. So then I thought that was it. You know, I'd met my goal. I went to orientation. I had a class schedule. I met my, you know, future roommate. And then first week of July, I got a text from one of my childhood friends who lived in Vermont, who actually went to University of Vermont at the time, saying, oh, you know, UVM just lost one of their big men. They're looking for a replacement. Like, you should totally text them, like, reach out. And so I go look at the article, and there's like a quote in there from Coach Becker saying, he's like, oh, there's no way this late in the game we find a transfer who's eligible, who could fill our needs. And within the next 15 minutes, I took my laptop, went to my room, wrote an email to like the entire coaching staff at UVM saying, like, I'm from Vermont, I'm transfer eligible, I fit the position of the guy who left, I've got good grades, you know, here's my transcripts, here's my phone number, here's my highlights, here's my game film. And then like the next morning, I woke up to a mixed call from one of the assistant coaches. And then that was it. I backed out of everything at Irvine, and I moved across the country, and within a few weeks.
Wow.
Such a cool story. And
that's unbelievable.
there's a lot to talk about there.
Yeah, sorry for the ramble.
No, but that's what we needed to hear. And I think it's just we just got to put emphasis on such an important thing of reaching out. Like you did it twice, and it gave you 2 opportunities. Taking the initiative, reaching out, going into the office at UC Irvine, and then sending the email. Good luck, found you in that area of you putting yourself out there, and giving yourself that opportunity. So yeah, I think that's great takeaway from all of our listeners and stuff. And Jack honestly did similar things when he was getting recruited as well. He could speak to it too.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's crazy just in general, having just a really mature thought of like, there's some opportunities for me to go play D3. There's some opportunities for maybe just to go to school, but this is what I want to do. And you said, JUCO is the place for me. And I think so many kids shy away from JUCO that it's not like glamorous. It's not like, okay, well, because everybody at the end of school graduation, they want to see, okay, I'm going D1 or I'm going D2 full ride. And it's really, for some guys, I know personally, it was like a huge shot to the ego. It's like, oh man, he's going JUCO? Like what? And I think for some guys, it's the best route. And I think that oftentimes, guys, like if they could just use one more year, maybe they could go to UVM or Irvine or wherever it may be. But I think often it's like timid. It's like, you get the perception of you're going JUCO. And I think that's like an unbelievably mature decision to step back and like say, like, hey, this is going to be the route for me. But yeah, I mean, just incredible that you just walked into the coach's office, which I think I've done, a handful of times, not willingly. I think my dad was like, get in there, just say something. But I think like stuff like that, you just never know when it's going to click. And your quote at the beginning was great with luck. I mean, someone happens to go down and that stuff, like if you're really into it and you want to be there, you're looking at rosters. Okay, they just lost 2 big men, seniors that graduate. This could be a great fit for me. Talk a little bit about just all of that happening at once, and just when UVM came, it was like, man, I want to get back here. Like this seems like the right fit for me, because I know in your Players Tribune article you talked a lot about, as you spoke about, finding the right fit academically and athletically, which is one of our questions that we'll just sort of go into next. You harped upon it a lot. Like you said you had some offers to go some different places, but you're like, I couldn't see myself at this place. What clicked for UVM? You're like, yeah, this is a fit for me.
Right. Well, I think it's sort of 2 parts. Like having grown up in Vermont and being a big, UVM fan when I was a kid, going to camp every year, it was sort of like, it was never on the radar until it was, you know what I mean? Like, and then when I thought about, how cool it would be to, go back to my home state, I still felt very connected to Vermont, even living in California for multiple years. I just felt like it was, the stars were aligning, essentially that, this opportunity was too good to pass up. Even if nothing came of it, I could at least say I tried, I reached out, when the opportunity came, I was ready. Like I said, with, the preparation part, within 15 minutes, I was able to I had a folder on my laptop that was, here's highlights, here's transcripts. If anybody reaches out, I can get them this immediately. You know what I mean? The last thing coaches who are recruiting want to do, like when they're talking to 50, 100 kids over the course of a year, is like, wait on somebody, or, your opportunity comes and goes just like that. So absolutely. I think that was a big part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, just having your ducks in a row. I mean, even just playing professionally now, it's like when teams come knocking, you better make sure you have all your stuff ready to go, because like that, it's okay, next guy. Talk a little bit about, just like I said, just like making that decision to go JUCO and how important that is. And like, I'm sure, maybe for you it was different, but I know a lot of guys who the stigma of JUCO is like, nah, I don't want to go JUCO. That's not for like me, JUCO, it's like, but in reality, it's a great fit for some people to set them up, like you said, as a stepping stone.
Yeah, and let me say this too before. This is what I was thinking of as well too, is JUCO is a place usually, especially in the basketball world and football too, that, it's somewhere that places people go if their grades are bad or something bad happened behavior-wise, or something in school or in trouble with the law. That is the stigma around it, and there's a lot of truth to that. And then Nate, obviously, he was the opposite of someone that had academic problem. So yeah, that's why I want to make that clear, like before going into JUCO, like you're not the stereotypical type of kid that would go into that setting. What was that whole process like?
Yeah, honestly, the stigma was very real. It took my parents a good amount of convincing, and my dad even more so, about, my parents are both very academically inclined, and they really pushed me academically. And I had gotten into some pretty good schools, like coming out of high school, and just to like walk away from that and, go to a junior college that, you don't have to have any sort of grade requirement. There's no application, there's no entrance exam. It's like you sign up and they'll give you a class schedule, essentially.
Mhm.
So it took a lot of trust from my parents to like believe that I could make something out of it. You know what I mean? Like, it's almost like, all the good work I did in high school. Now, it doesn't mean nothing, but I have to do it again in JUCO in order to move on to another college, right? They're going to be looking at my JUCO transcripts. I have to be transfer eligible. I sort of have to prove myself again. And so it took a long time and a lot of convincing, but shout out my parents for trusting me to sort of get it done. But yeah, like you said, that also sort of hurt me in the recruiting process, as well as like some schools just don't take JUCOs, don't recruit JUCOs. There's something to be said for having a player in your program for 4 years with the development. Turning guys over every 2 years maybe isn't good for team culture or whatever. But somewhere like UVM, I'm not sure if this is official, but I've been told that I'm the only ever JUCO to come through UVM, and it's strictly because I'm that anti JUCO type player, and it's really just because of the grades.
Absolutely. Dive into that. Talk about that a little bit. Like, even when you went to Irvine, it was like, hey, I'm already in school. Like, this is not going to be a problem for me. I'm not going to be a hassle. Like, even UVM,
Yes.
here's my transcript. Grades are great. And then it's just a matter of finding the basketball fit. Because I think a lot of times you want them to say no to you because of your talent level, or maybe you're a D2 guy, D3 guy, rather than say, hey, you're an unbelievable player, but we can't get you in here.
Yeah, I mean, in my experience talking to 40 to 50 coaches, the first thing is always like, what are your grades like? What is your transcripts like? Because if your grades are good and you can get into the school on your own, they have a lot of leverage. You know what I mean? Like, whether it's moving scholarship money around or whatever, and that also proves that you're a good student. You're not going to be a problem off the court. I was at UC Irvine's orientation, and I got a call from a random school in Texas, and this coach is like complaining to me on the phone about his players. I've never met this guy, don't even know what the school is, and he's saying, I got 2 guys who are ineligible. I see from, like, I got your transcripts from your coach. These are legit. I would offer you a scholarship right now, just because I need guys who can stay eligible. And so really, for me, going the JUCO route, what opened the doors was the academics, not necessarily. Now, I had a good season, I was all conference player or whatever, but at all these showcases, there's a lot of talented guys out there who can't make it eligibility based on, going to various schools. So, the first question they always ask is, what are your transcripts like? And then once they're good, the door is much more open.
100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely, there's a stigma going to community college or JUCO, like non-student athletes too, and it makes so much sense to like get those prereq, figure out what you want to do. You were saying you didn't really know what you wanted to do yet, like, and you get these prereq classes done, and then you can transfer over and save so much money if you're spending money on college, like, and you can actually dive into your major. Talk about what was the JUCO class system kind of like, taking those classes? Did it help you kind of steer you in the direction
Right.
computer science?
Because you said you didn't, even in high school, you said, I didn't know what I wanted to do, academically either. You were like, basketball, like, I think I want to do it, but academically, I still don't even know, which is, first of all, I didn't know what I wanted to do as a junior. So even to think about it as when you're a senior in high school is already, hats off to you.
Yeah, for sure. And like, the 6 schools I got into out of high school academically were all for like different things. So I'm like, I feel like I can't commit to anything right now. So
Right.
going to JUCO, my JUCO is pretty well rated academically, actually. but it's sort of like those smaller classes. And I just tried to knock off as many general education courses as I could in my 2 years. And I sort of narrowed it down to getting an AA degree in math and science. And then, trying to knock off those courses was really good, because once I got to UVM, I could just focus on those higher division courses, because I came in declaring as a computer science student. So, another way that stepping stone helped me is a lot of basketball players can't pull off doing like these STEM classes. It's pretty difficult, right? Especially
Absolutely.
When I was at UC Irvine, they were asking me what major I was in, and I had said computer science, and they said that's going to be tough. Like, we have a lot of guys start there or go the physics route or whatever and have to change because of the time commitment. So what going to West Valley JUCO allowed me to do was like get as many of those math classes and like prereq courses done as I could. So once I got to UVM, it was still obviously very difficult, but I could sort of focus in and not have to deal with all these extraneous classes and really focus on my major classes, which helped a lot.
So interesting. That's so cool. Yeah, that's I've always heard that from people, like, doing those 2 years, non-athletes too, like it saved me money, and then it made everything easier going in through my major. So you get to UVM here, you're a walk-on, and then you start starting games. You were starting games and playing D1 basketball. Like, what was that shift going from JUCO to playing like packed houses up in Vermont and starting basketball games? Like, what was that jump like for you?
Honestly, I still think back about it, and like it's hard to believe sometimes. Like, even our first road trip, we played at Eastern Michigan and at Purdue. So like my first real minutes were at Purdue. There's like 12,000 people there. Like 12 of my family members are in the stands because they're from the Midwest. I'm like the first sub off the bench, and I'm like guarding Isaac Haas, who's like 7'2", and I'm just like, how did I get here in under a year?
Yeah. So cool. Yeah. Tough game. We won't talk about that.
Yeah. But yeah, it was just like sort of a whirlwind almost, like you mentioned, I think I started 6 games in conference, some of which were like, those home games with my parents in the stands. It felt like this is sort of what I was working towards. It was better than I could have imagined, when I turned down, going to school just to go to school, or I turned down some of those D2 schools. It was maybe a harder road. Obviously I walked on, so I wasn't a full scholarship player, but it was sort of like back when I decided to really go for it, this is what I was after, and this is almost better than what I was after. So it was very like fulfilling, especially for my, for my family to be there and stuff. So it sort of was like, I met my goal.
Yeah. No, especially for your parents, because they already got the red flags up when you're like, I'm for JUCO, and then they're sitting at UVM back where it all started. So I think that's real cool. And talk about.
Go ahead.
No, just so you go as a high school basketball player, and you're obviously, or you're a teenager, whatever, 14, I think it was, and you go from Vermont to Cali, right? And you go from, obviously, everyone knows Cali, Texas, Florida, Virginia, sports are sort of at an elevated level. Like, there's just so many people. Sports are just at a high, just all over: football, basketball, baseball. Talk about going from Vermont to Cali. Vermont, you're a tall guy. I'm sure you're dominating all sorts of games. And then you get dropped into a bucket in California, and I'm sure your eyes were like, wow, there's some guys out here. What was that like for you just as a high school athlete? Because I know, just being a high school athlete in general is tough. Like, all you're thinking about is like, am I going to make JV? Am I going to make varsity? Then you get dropped into, all of a sudden you're at like a whole nother level. How did you just stay with it, I guess, going to somewhere? Because it happens to kids move, or if you're a guy like Ethan or me, you go from a public school and then you make a decision to go prep, and then you're like, oh my gosh, these dudes are nasty. You're like, is this for me? So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I definitely had some "is this for me" moments, because I moved between 8th grade and freshman year of high school. So I was coming into a new high school, and the high school I was supposed to go to in Vermont had a freshman, a JV, and a varsity team. And then the freshman I was going to in San Jose, California, only had JV and varsity. And, San Jose, the city, has almost double the amount of the population of the entire state of Vermont. And so I'm coming in like, I don't even know if I'm going to make the JV team, right? I don't know anybody. I don't know like how good these teams are, what the leagues are like. And sort of sticking with this academic theme, we picked a school strictly based on, it was a really highly rated public school. My parents didn't really want us to go to private school. And so it's just sort of an arbitrary choice where I landed. And so I sort of got in with the coach that summer, played in a few summer league games, and then obviously went on to make the JV team. But like you said, it's a totally, different world out there than Vermont, Vermont being one of the smallest states, obviously. And just, I think the biggest thing for my development was like playing against obviously those guys in my high school league, but then like playing AAU tournaments around the Bay Area, San Francisco, Oakland, Sacramento, and just seeing kids from all over who are very good at basketball. And I think, as far as my development, I don't think I would have been, the same player had I been in Vermont through high school, just with the lack of competition and experience that I went through.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And I think that's so like important for kids to hear, because we work with kids all the time, and they're either a freshman or they're a junior, like, oh, I want to go D1, here or there. And I'm like, okay, we'll take some of those guys that you think are going to go there and then match yourself up against those guys. Say, are these guys that I can step on the court with? Right. And for you, I think it gave you perspective of like, okay, these are the dudes in San Francisco and the Bay Area, and this is where I got to get to. Because there's kids all the time. I mean, we work with kids all the time, and they say this stuff, and I'm like, okay, well, did you see the kid, that got drafted here out of high school? Like, are you matching up here? And it's like, you're not watching them play, so it's like, I don't know. You could be nasty, but it's definitely good for kids to gain perspective, and especially kids who are in the Northeast, where competition might not be as excelled as it is, in states like California. For sure. That's why Ethan had to get out of Connecticut and go play prep. Like, he thought he was a big dog, and then he went to NMH, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, there's a bunch of other tall white guys here too."
100% sure. There were multiple times where I questioned if I was good enough, but that's all jokes aside. But that's really how you figure it out from there. Let's wrap this up here in the last couple of questions. We talked about so many good things. So we ask all of our guests, if being a student athlete is so hard, why do it? Because that's definitely what a lot of parents, I'm sure, ask themselves, like when they see all the kids go through. A lot of kids ask themselves that question at some point throughout their athletic career. If this is so hard, why should I keep doing this? What's your answer to that question?
Yeah, I think, I had multiple times in my basketball career where I was seriously like, okay, I at this moment, I'm comfortable just going to school and, not playing competitively anymore. And every time I was like, I feel like this is my only shot. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to be an incoming freshman in college. I'm not going to be transferring to a new school ever again. And I sort of felt like school is always an option. Obviously there's more to it than that, but, I only have one shot at playing basketball. I love it. I've done a lot of work to get here. I want to see this through. I'm not a big fan of not doing something because you think you might regret it. But in this case, it was like such a big part of my life that, I got to see what I can do with this and keep playing, obviously if it's the right fit. But on top of that, I think, there's a lot of things looking back, having done it already, that, sports, especially at Vermont in the Division I level, that like taught me or instilled in me that you can't really get anywhere else, like that camaraderie, as well as like, the amount of hard work and dedication and time management skills that you get out of it. Just something that helped me a lot, going into grad school after Vermont and into like a career. I still rely on a lot of those skills that I sort of built up during my 3 years at UVM.
Yeah. I mean, and just talk about just even before that, I mean, you're a senior in high school, 17, 18 years old, making a life decision to go to JUCO. And then you break your foot, and then you're battling and saying, okay, back's against the wall, it's time to go. This is like real stuff that you're dealing with as an 18, 19-year-old kid that, if you're not in this athletic world, like you're really not experiencing, unless maybe you're military or, something like that. Like these are serious things that you're going through at an early age in life that without basketball, I don't think you ever would have, been in these sorts of situations.
And selling yourself, right? Like, this is me. I'm going to UC Irvine. Like this is what I did in the classroom. This is what I do athletically. Like that's like a job interview in itself too. Like you're doing that as a 17, 18-year-old kid, like showing, like this is showing that initiative. I think it's such a cool story. With the emails and the walking into the office, like I love that. So I think that's like, oh, if anyone could take anything from this podcast is like do that, like take the initiative and do what Nate did and like send the email, like look for the right fit and go after it. But I'll let you take the last question here.
Yeah, definitely. Before I go on to the last question, talk just a little bit more just about that, like just that whole life experience. Just like you're really like through basketball and through sports, you're put in a situation where you're making life decisions, and obviously seem like a humble guy, but like you're putting it all on the line. You're putting your heart on the line. You're putting your parents' trust on the line. You say, you know what, I'm going to get this done. I'm going to find a way, whatever it takes. If I got to go to JUCO, I got to go to JUCO. I'm going to get my grades right. And talk a little bit about just, from the heart, like that's real stuff that you're dealing with at an early age, whether, you're from Cali, Vermont, Texas, it's serious stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the stuff you just talked about, like those life altering decisions, like that's the stuff I used to like lose sleep over, obviously, coming down to the wire, like, do I want to keep playing? Do I not want to keep playing? What do I want to study? And honestly, like I relied a lot on my parents, just going back and forth with them, decision making, talking about, the ramifications of each decision down the line. And they were also sort of like my safety net, you know what I mean? They, if I were to have failed at JUCO, not failed, but, not reached my goal, they had my back, whether that's support for still living at home, support for, they had a college fund set up for me. So, it on paper, it looks like, there's a lot of risk, but there's also a lot of like safety nets behind me. So I think that really gave me the confidence to sort of go through with it. On top of that, I think, with them pushing so hard academically when I was growing up, that I was really of the mindset of find somewhere that works academically, because one day, sooner or later, basketball is going to be done. Like I'm not going to make a lifetime career out of playing basketball. I think that was apparent from the start. So wherever I'm going to school, if basketball goes away for whatever reason, they were all about like, where can you be that you'll still be successful, that you'll still enjoy it, you'll still get the college experience. And so that was sort of the mindset I took and all the decision making I made, and it ended up working out.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. And I think everyone thinks they're going to play sports forever. I mean, even I still think that, but one day it does end, and you got to have that decision or whatever it is, and then be able to put yourselves in the shoes that you need to take the next step. Our last question here is, if you had one piece of advice to give to your younger self, go back to junior year Nate or sophomore year Nate or senior, whatever, what would it be and why?
This is a really tough question. I think I may contradict myself here a little bit, but I think like try not to like base your decisions off of what you think other people think you should do. You know what I mean? I think the best way to explain this was the year I broke my foot, sitting at my brother's high school basketball game in a walking boot, and some guy comes up to me and he goes, "Hey man, I played against you in high school. You're really good. Like, where are you playing ball now?" And I said, "Oh, I'm at West Valley." And he goes, "Oh, I thought for sure you would have gone D1, right?" It's the same thing you were saying earlier. It's like, why aren't you D1? What happened? And so there was many, many examples of that. Like, when like that came up every single time I considered just going to school and not playing basketball. It's like, oh, you're good in high school. What happened? Like worrying about what all these people are going to say if I don't play ended up being like a major factor in my decision making. When looking back now, it's me that's going to be going through classes or practice or, not playing or actually playing. It's my life, and it's so hard to block out all those extra noises and stuff. But if you're like in a similar scenario, I think that's what I would tell myself back then. It's like, it's you who's going to be doing it every single day. Like, do what's best for you.
Yeah.
That's well said. And that comes down to the whole identity thing with sports and basketball. And it can be so hard, when you stop playing too, if you make that decision and people are like, oh, I for sure thought you'd be playing or doing this, or like, yeah, like it's not letting other people's judgments, like, what's best for yourself. It's well said, but
yeah. No, it's incredible, because that's like those people who ask you, what's going on, he actually takes 10 steps away from you. He's totally forgot about you. He's not even worried about you, but it's like, it makes an impact on you so much. And especially as an athlete, you're competitive. Like, what do you mean? What do you, like, I'll show you, but it's like, so often that happens. And for you to take a step back, it's like these people, and especially on social media, it's glorified so much of where you're going to school or who's watching or how many likes you get. People are excited for you, but it's like those people, second thought. It comes down to you, your family, what the best decision is for you, whether it's academically, athletically, whatever it may be. But I think that's such a great piece of advice, because we get so caught up in where you're going, what coaches are talking to you, when it's like, they don't really care. I mean, I'm sure some people care, but it's like, it's about you. And that's the most important thing, because it's your life to live, for sure. Nate, you killed it, man. Excited you came on. I feel like I knew you before I knew you after reading that player tribute article.
That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks, Nate. That was awesome. Biggest fan. For those who don't know, Nate is the best disc golfer I've ever seen. Another thing we can add to his bio, but if you're ever in Wisconsin, hit him up, because he will take the best disc golf courses and take your money.
Well, dude.
Or when he gets that RV, maybe he'll just drive to you.
Oh yeah, I'll come to you.
Love it.
Thanks for tuning in to The Pickle, who is brought to you by AC4SA, academic coaching for student athletes, whose goal is to use the power of sport to unleash the athlete's potential in the academic arena.